This episode was sponsored by Santos Threads. Make sure to visit Santos-Threads for the latest and greatest in men's and women's Latino hip-hop inspired streetwear apparel. Visit SANTOS-THREADS.com. You are now listening to the Santos Says podcast, episode number 24. With your host, Santos, proud owner of Santos Threads. Welcome everybody once more to the Santos Says podcast. We are here, episode number 24. I have a special guest here for you today on this edition. Happy to be with you once more as the calendar continues to turn, and we get into the very cold, well, not cold in all parts, but certainly cold in the Northeast for yours truly, as we embark getting towards the holiday season, of course. And here today, I have a special guest. This person is an artist and entrepreneur. She's a Latina. She's Puerto Rican, like yours truly. And I felt like I really needed to have her here because I love the work. I'm a fan of her work. I have a great deal of respect for what she does. And her name is Ketsy. So she goes by the name of Ketsy, and she's an entrepreneur. She's really found a way to create some really great art and make a business for herself and really do well for herself. And she's really doing great things on social media. You can see her posts. And she also has really nice work and artwork that she puts together and has really made a nice niche for herself. It's a celebration of culture and heritage. And quite frankly, I love what she's done with her business. And so we're going to talk about what she's up to. Ketsy really brings something unique, a really unique business in a unique industry because, you know, right now, as we've seen Latinos, really entrepreneurial spirits, Latino entrepreneurs really taking off right now. And I'm so proud, and it really fills me with great joy. It's a privilege to see the growth, how we've grown Latinos in this country as we continue to march forward towards entrepreneurship, growth, pursuing our dreams, opportunities, so on and so forth. And so I'm really happy and excited to have her here. And we're going to talk with Ketsy about her business. She has a business called Sketzii, where she offers a lot of her unique art pieces and really turn them into unique items, merchandise and different things. She does that. She does some also, she's a brand ambassador. She does a lot of different things, and we're going to talk about what she does as well, as she has a lot of different interests. And I really feel that it's great to be able to talk to people like this who have that unique perspective. And as a Latina, obviously as a woman, an entrepreneur, and someone who's talented, an artist, certainly it's always good to share stories with people like this and really understand where they're coming from and where they got their start and all those things. So I'm going to ask her about her background. I want to get into some things about her, how she got started, all those things and much more. We're going to talk about entrepreneur stuff as obviously myself being an entrepreneur. I always love to share stories. It's always good to give information, pass information along, tell stories about our triumphs, our defeats, trials and tribulations, highs and lows, because as you guys know, this is a journey that is always, you know, it's going like this. It's always moving. It's fluid. It's never just flatline. It's never just one thing, right? So it evolves. It's an ever evolving saga. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I've always said that, you know, I subscribe to the theory that, you know, the destination is the journey. You're not trying to get to a final destination. There's no final destination. You're always trying to move on to that next space, and you're kind of running through milestones on the way. And without further ado, I do have my guest here. Her name is Ketsy. She does amazing things, very talented, very good. I love a good spirit. You could tell she's a good spirit. Very proud of her roots. She's a fellow Puerto Rican, an artist, entrepreneur, and other things as well. And so without further delay, I'd like to welcome to the show, Ketsy.
Hey.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for coming. I appreciate you accepting.
Yeah, for sure. As soon as you sent it to me and I went and looked at your podcast and I went and looked at the other interviews, I was like, oh yeah, bet for sure. He's trying to support the people and get information and news and inspiration out there. So I love that.
No, definitely, most definitely. And I have to pause 1 second. Ay, ay, ay.
You're
All
good.
right.
I've never used this streaming platform before, so I was trying to figure it out and it wouldn't let my mic come on or my the video come on. So I was reading instructions and I was like, all right, I gotta push allow for all this stuff.
No, no, listen, it's one of those things that you learn as you go. Myself, it took me a good, I want to say a good month and a half before I knew how to use it, how to put the proper screen, because
Yeah.
there's different angles. I mean, there's like a million things on this. So
Oh.
graphics, whatever it is. So it took me forever, but
So it's not Zoom. It's
no,
like
Zoom.
it's a little bit more advanced than the Zoom. It took me a second to get the Zoom right too.
Hey, listen, that's the world we live in right now, right? I mean, that's the world we live in. And
Yeah.
so with that being said, right, let's get into that because I know how, first of all, how has the pandemic treated you through this time, with everything going on with your business, with your other interests, right, with your art? Talk to me about
Yeah.
that.
The pandemic, it has been ups and downs for real, because the business wouldn't have started if it wasn't for the pandemic. Like as messed up as that sounds, it was where I was furloughed from my job and didn't know that I would have a job. Yeah, they had shut everything down here in St. Pete, Florida. And I had been at this company for 5 years, and out of nowhere, they were like, yeah, we don't know if we're going to bring you back. And so that was super stressful, and then with Florida's wild open as it is, so that was stressful too, like having to physically go to work every day. So on the one hand it was like, all right, you kind of get a break, and on the other hand it's like, but how are we finna pay these bills? So it was rough at first, and that's kind of how I got into like the digital drawing. I had an iPad and just went at it. I mean, I had all this time now, right? And then I started getting on social media a lot more. I had started this thing called Glam Saturdays because I just felt, I was depressed. You're in the house all the time. I had no reason to get dressed or put on makeup or anything. You just, as a woman too, you just kind of feel like, oh, there's like a lull. So I would just get glammed up for no reason on a Saturday. And sure enough, it started to like catch on in my stories on Instagram. And so for me, the pandemic was more of a way for me to like connect with all types of strangers and different people I never would have, because I never would have spent that much time, online. And then it was a way for me to get those digital drawings out there. And sure enough, people wanted to pay for them and they were really supportive. And I just couldn't believe it. So, about like midway through last summer, it was one of those things where I just put my all into my art, and I realized, man, maybe I should stay home more often because I'm hella productive right now. So in that sense, it ended up being somewhat of a blessing for me. And I know it was like something that was really unfortunate for a lot of people, but I just kind of hustled my way through it and just tried to live by any means necessary. And but sure enough, the job turned back on and they brought us back. And so now I was stuck in this like, yo, I want to do art full time, but I still need to pay the bills. Nothing was consistent. And now I feel like things are evening out, and I'm learning slowly how to do the life work balance thing. And in my personal life, the pandemic was just something where I was able to talk to my friends more often. I mean, I think for me it was a whole different thing. I was really blessed, really lucky, privileged, all of that, to go through it and like be okay. And I have like a huge friend group, and we all live in different states as it is, you know what I mean? So for us to get together and like we were playing video games on Twitch together and things like that. Like that's stuff we would have never done before. So for what it was last year in that like really depressing state, I feel like I found a way to kind of get out of it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it was a similar situation for me too. Um, I'm glad that you shared that. The it gives you extra time to be able to think and kind of refocus and do things. And I think I could relate to that story. And as a lot of us can, right? Just kind of like saying, okay, I have more time. Let me focus on what I really want to do.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
somehow that inspiration thing struck, you know, and it was one of those things where it's like, well, you can't really fail, you know, and if you fail, so what? Like, how much do we have to lose at this point, you know? For me, it was like, what, I'm gonna lose a job? I'm probably gonna lose the job anyways. Am I gonna lose, you know, the money? Well, the money's not coming in anyways, you know. It was that type of thing. So really, I felt like there was a lot of people who were able to come out of it, and then, but I also know a lot of people where, you know, that kind of that depression and that sadness really took over. I mean, even I think in personal life, at when one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. You know what I mean? So that's not to say that there weren't struggles, because there was definitely some struggles there.
Yeah, it's funny because it almost seems like, don't you feel sometimes in life it's almost like, damn, like, can I have it all up to here, right? Like you want it
Right.
all to be at the same level, and that's just not how life works. Like everything is not always on the up and up at the same time.
Yeah, no.
Um,
And then when it's going really good, you're like this. Like, when is something gonna go wrong? At least that's me. I'm a Virgo, so I'm always thinking like, man, things are going way too well right now. Is there something fishy going on? Like, when is something bad going to happen? I'm always like on the edge of something.
yeah, yeah, it seems like that sometimes. It's almost like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But
Yeah,
I think, one of the things I wanted to bring up to you, mention to you, is that I felt like one of the things I saw was your work. I really had great respect for your work. Myself being Puerto Rican as well,
hey,
seeing that pride, right? Boricua, right?
yeah.
So tell me about some of that inspiration, as far as like how you drew inspiration from your culture, your background, and tell me a little bit about. You don't have to get too right in the
Yeah.
weeds, but just a little bit of overview of your history and how that factored into your work.
Yeah, I've always tried different, like, to paint different subjects, but honestly, like, la cultura, my culture, Puerto Rico, I've always come back to that consistently. I've tried other things, other routes, even with commissions that are like portraits of stuff, or people, you know, abstract work, all of that. It always goes back to my roots. I can't. It's what I'm most passionate about, and I think being like a diaspora Boricua, that connection and that like longing to La Isla all the time is just something constant in my life. And I wouldn't be who, you know, I am today if it wasn't for growing up half the year in PR and growing up half the year here. And it affects literally every aspect of my life. So because that's what I'm most passionate about, and like kind of getting the word out there, I've realized everywhere that I've moved to, I meet other diaspora Latinos, you know, not just Puerto Ricans. And when you find that community, you're like, oh man, we got so much in common. And that community just makes you feel kind of like safe, and it makes you feel like home. And that's what's always made me happy. That's what's always made me feel comfortable. And that's where like my passion lies. So that's how I end up just painting about it.
Yeah, no, and it's reflective in your work, and that's really something that um you should be commended for, because there are so many times, right? How many times you've seen, diaspora, as you call them, as
Yeah.
we know them to be, diaspora Puerto Ricans or Latinos, kind of with those, we have those pressures where we're trying to kind of like ingratiate ourselves and adapt to American
Yeah.
culture, and we lose sight of where we're from.
Oh, for sure. I mean, assimilation is real, and not even on like purposefully. It's just, you know, when you're embedded in this culture, like you're from the north, I grew up in the south. Those cultures, you know, those are two different cultures. That's also a part of like who I am. And then, you know, we're hella Boricua at the house, and we're hella Puerto Rican at the house. And fusing all of that together, I feel like everyone has this we kind of had this bond that we understand each other in that way, you know, like you understand what it is to kind of fight against one power and be hella supportive of your community, but then you also like, we grew up here, and there's this dynamic of like fighting forces almost, and you have to find a way to like fuse the two and say like, all of that's me and all of that is a part of me. And I realize that there's a lot of other people who feel that way, and that's why I feel like my work can speak to those people, because we're always longing for like this connection. And I think personally for me, there was another I was speaking to somebody else about it, and I kind of was like in therapy when I was talking on my Instagram live. I said, man, it really feels like we're always trying to prove ourselves, like how Puerto Rican are you, or how Latina are you, or how, you know, how connected are you really to La Isla? Do you speak Spanish? Do you not speak Spanish? And for me, like getting my art out there in that way is almost kind of like proving to myself and or to others, like I'm really supportive of this, you guys. You know, like I'm not just out here. My cousins used to say, you know, I was the prima de allá afuera, and I'm like,
Ajá, de allá
good
afuera.
bro. Like I, I come every year,
La Yankee, no una Yankee ya. Una
Yeah,
Yankee.
yeah,
Una
yeah.
gringa. Gringa.
Yeah, yeah. I was always trying to like fight that narrative, and now as an adult, I kind of just accept the narrative and know that like I'm from both at the same time. It's all a part of me.
Yeah, yeah, because over time, it's almost like you become, excuse me, you accept the fact that you're not going to please everybody. You
Right,
go to the, cuando tú vas para la isla, you're not going to be Puerto Rican and like them, as
right.
like in their eyes, right? You're not going to be as Puerto Rican as them. And then when you're here, to some people, they look at you like, well, you're super Puerto Rican,
Yeah, yeah,
non Puerto Ricans, right? Oh, you're super Puerto Rican. Oh,
right.
did you just get here yesterday, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
You fresh off the JetBlue flight, ain't you?
it's fresh off the JetBlue from San Juan. So, right?
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. It's conversations that I have with friends all the time, and I've got friends from everywhere. Friends from DR and Panama and Colombia, and Cuban friends, and like we all kind of have that same dynamic. And some people consider themselves, more from the país than others, and having those conversations, but like in a lighthearted way. I feel like that's when we really have that camaraderie. We can kind of like make fun of each other and make fun of these stereotypes that they that they have of kids like us.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, since you mentioned about like what it feels like, right? As far as do you speak Spanish? Do you not? How much about the culture do you know? Do you
Right.
know about the himno nacional? All that, right? What is your opinion on not just Puerto Rican, but like other Latinos who don't speak Spanish?
Um, I think that one, we kind of have like in order for you to stay connected to your culture, you kind of have a responsibility to at least try or to at least learn. I definitely feel that. I don't think it's necessary to be considered, Latino or whatever. Like this stuff is in sangre, you know what I mean? Like this is in your blood regardless. And it used to be where I wouldn't, I had to learn English watching Sesame Street, but then I was growing up in the States and I was speaking Spanglish, like straight half and half sentences. And mommy took me to some therapist, and the therapist, back in the early 90s, is like, well, if you're going to live in the US, she has to be able to speak English. So you should speak only English at the house.
Mm,
So little by little, the Spanish left, and every time I would try to speak Spanish, everybody, would make fun of me. And back then, I was just so self conscious about it. And I feel like it was more of you already know how familia is, they make fun
hmm
in like the most bullying type of way.
Ruthless.
Yeah, super ruthless. So then I would step back. Like I really didn't want to speak the Spanish as much. I would only speak the English, even knowing like if I would be in circles where people spoke Spanish, but I knew that they spoke English, I'm speaking English back because that's what I feel most comfortable with. And I'm afraid somebody's going to make fun of me. So like I said, as I got older, I felt like I had the responsibility to learn and to really practice it for that matter. And so the Spanglish is good for me right now. So I feel like if people, didn't grow up so much with the language in the household, to definitely try and like find your roots again. And if that doesn't feel authentic to you, I think it's more about authenticity. If it doesn't feel authentic to you, then then do you. But I personally just think, why wouldn't you want to like find your roots, and why wouldn't you want to, try a little bit?
Agreed. Now, I have another question for you, kind of similar to this, right? What does Atillo Puerto Rico mean to you?
Family and home, and it's where I would go every single. I mean, I think I've been every single year since my birth. Like 3 months after I was born, mommy put me on a plane. We were in Atija, and then I went for like my 1-year-old birthday, and this was back when too that there were still, well, there still is now, but on our property, wooden houses, and abuela's house was like this tiny little thing with like two other rooms kind of made up with the ceiling and
Yeah.
a couple of walls here and there, to what it is now. Like I've just watched it grow over time, and the family grow over time, and abuelos passing away and aunts and uncles, and it's just like it just feels like home. I have such a connection to Atillo. It's really where my mom is from. My dad's from Quebradilla, but that's like up the street right around the corner.
Yeah.
But Atillo is just like it's where I grew up as a kid, and there were times, when I grew up in partially in North Carolina. So we would fly for the summers to PR, and it's like, oh, we gotta go to PR. Like, you already know that the Abuela's house is like really cold, and like 15 of my cousins are there, and we gotta share like 2 rooms. You know, my spoiled privileged ass and
Right.
first world problems is really what it is.
Yeah.
I am so thankful and grateful that I had those experiences, because it just opened my eyes to like, it's a whole different world, but I truly, genuinely appreciate that lifestyle so much more than the lifestyle that we have here, and how it's a little bit slower and how you kind of have to do things yourself. And, there's that. I just feel like Puerto Ricans in general, all over La Isla, we just have that attitude where we could get past anything and do anything, and we're gonna prosper no matter what. And I feel like you kind of don't have that here. I didn't have that in North Carolina growing up, so I was really proud of that. And as time went on, going to Atillo was like, yes, we going to PR. You got really excited about it.
But yeah, you get that sense of community. You get
Yeah.
that family, right? So it's like la sangre llama, right? Like they
Yep.
say, la sangre llama. So like even though you've made your life in the States, right? You reside in the States, but
Yep.
there's a great part of you that feels like it belongs over there.
Yeah, no, that feels like home. That's like I'm going back home. Here always feels like something that's temporary to me. Like the goal is always to get to PR, move to PR, be closer to PR. And I went back and forth over time, but life gets in the way, and we all have to make our decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you make of the current situation? Now, again, you don't have to talk politics. We won't, right? We won't go there. So,
Okay.
whatever you're, comfortable with
Yeah.
discussing is fine, right?
Yeah.
Just in general, what do you make right now of what's going on? Because obviously, we've heard a lot of issues with as far as like real estate, um,
Yeah.
Americans buying real estate out there,
Yeah.
right? Real estate tycoon. What is your opinion on that? What's going on? Because it's a real thing.
It's a real thing, and one that I've seen happen before my eyes. So I also grew up in Hawaii, and I always use this example. If anyone's ever lived in Hawaii, I feel like you can have a different opinion, or at least a more like educated perspective on it. Because when you see that type of like, I don't that type of colonization and moving in,
Mhm.
and somebody from a different culture kind of imposing their own culture, it's so sad to see. And there's always this like, there's the fighting of the culture, and I feel like Hawaii did a really good job of trying to hold on to it. There's a lot of different things that have happened there. So for instance, I went to elementary school there, and I also did some college while I was there as well. I went to University of Hawaii at Manoa, and you have to take Hawaiian studies, and you have to take Hawaiian languages. And there are some benefits if you can prove that you have Hawaiian blood, Hawaiian ancestry. So that type of thing I really love, because they're really trying to hold on to their culture and trying to hold on to their traditions. But then you've also seen, them getting completely pushed out, and native Hawaiians are probably in the most, like, on the most poverty level there. And I feel like the same thing would happen to Boricuas in La Isla. You're going to be part of the poverty level. They're not going to care about you. You're going to get pushed out. And because there's such a culture shock, and it's going to happen like that, like so immediately, your land will be bought up, your house will be bought up. We already know some of the things that we do over there. We don't necessarily go by the rules. We don't necessarily follow the laws. Let these people come in, yeah, man, that stuff is over. Like, they
Over.
take everything from you without,
La cultura ya se va. That's
and
it. It's done.
the English will become the main language. And right now, everyone's kind of, Spanglish is really heavy there. And I feel like all of my cousins over time, like, they've at least understood how to speak English. But for instance, in Atillo, there was a Home Depot, that put up. So all of the ferreterias that were around, that was competition for them. And Home Depot said, well, you have to be able to speak English to work here. And so here, Home Depot is paying, X amount better pay than it was for,
Hmm.
local mom and pop hardware stores. But if you didn't speak English, you didn't even have the opportunity to go. And that's just like a small example of what could happen, and probably will happen from what I hear. And it's sad. It's sad to see. I've seen it with my, like I said, I've seen it in Hawaii where they're really trying to hold it down. But if it became something like that, I mean, it's going to be a whole different Puerto Rico. It's just going to be, and some people might like that version of it. That's not, I'm not here to judge which version of it that they like better, that they feel is right, but it just, seeing it there, I feel like Puerto Rico would go down the same route, and it would just be sad, just because it wouldn't be the same. Some people say change is better, but I don't know.
So I can gather where you stand from from your answer, and there's no right or wrong answer, but
right.
let's just say I'm in lockstep with you. So I mean, the culture could be eradicated if we got to that point. So just imagine if we got to the point where they became number 51. Now again, I'm not, full disclosure, it's whatever. You like this, you like that, whatever.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, and I've been adamant against 51. So I'm I'm gonna put it out there.
Me too.
That's why I said I know where you stand on that. I'm with you. I just don't see how, again, if you do, fine, but that's what happens. Just look at Hawaii. All you got to do is look at Hawaii as an example, and it's right there. And it's my heart. That's my biggest fear as a Puerto Rican. I got to tell you, that's my biggest fear because of the loss of culture and heritage that we have. That scares me.
Yeah, it scares me too. And, even in my own family, I've had, debates, even with my own parents. Sometimes they'll be on this side of the fence, and sometimes they'll be on this side of the fence. Them had raised me in the States, but their goal was always to go back to PR and retire in PR. And then, they happen to be very critical of PR, but they went back, and they love it. And that's home for them. And we're always on different, I'm always trying to, listen to different podcasts, and definitely going online and seeing, different people's opinions. I listen to my family as well, because I can't say that everyone in my family, like my primos, I just feel like they really don't understand like what would actually happen. In the long run, it seems nice, and it seems like, you're going to get all of these great and fabulous things because you think that the US has all these great and fabulous things. And it's not, man. It's not, because the second they take away your land, and the second one that they take away your home, your jobs, what do you have at that point, And it's already, Puerto Rico's already on this harsh poverty line as it is. And, it's super askew, there's really not any kind of middle ground right now. And I think it all comes down to, I don't want to say it all comes down to, because I honestly don't have any faith in the government. But if that's the route that we have to go, you got to vote. Like, you got to vote. You have to be out there knowing what people are doing and whatnot. And then if you decide not to, perfectly cool and all that. But you can't complain about the things, you know what I mean, that are
well said
in your barrio without you being involved either. Because yes, it's an evil, but it's almost like this necessary evil, because what else is there? I personally don't have the answers. I just know how I feel. For me, it's more of like this emotional pullback for it to become a state.
I'm with you. Yeah. It's a nightmare. It's just not who we are. Like, and again, I invite anybody who doesn't know the history of Puerto Rico, go back and look at Puerto Rico, look into how it was even seized as a territory. That it was possessed they possessed it, the island, against its own will. Right. So that's it for that part.
They teach us history, they definitely don't teach us that history in the States, let alone in PR. Like, there's things that I've told, my parents. And have you read War Against All Puerto Ricans?
Yes. That
book, right? So I just feel like that's something everybody should read. And gave that book to my dad, kind of passed it on to different people, and even he was like, man, they didn't tell us about any of this.
No, they don't, because it doesn't benefit them.
It just makes so much sense as to why, like, so much fell in place for me after reading about our history, because it's like, oh, I know why abuela and abuelo went to Chicago, and I know why we migrated to New York, and I know why they ended up coming back, and why Jibaros are Jibaros, and why San Juan is San Juan. Like, all of it just fell into
connected
place for me.
No, I definitely, I 100% I agree with you, and that book is an awesome book. I would definitely recommend anybody to read it.
Yeah.
If you want to understand the situation of what's going on now and what's happened in the past.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Um,
it always repeats itself. You know, you read that and you can correlate it to like everything that's going on now, and it just makes you like, you know, it was a hard read for me. I'm gonna tell you, I had to put the book down a couple of times because I was like, oh my gosh.
I agree. It's
Yeah,
very it's a tough read because it gets your it pulls at your heartstrings. It pulls at your emotions because you say, "Man, how do we let this happen?"
yeah.
Right? And so moving on to you, right? Talk to me about Sketzii because obviously, talk to me about your business. I know you have a great website out. Talk to me about Sketzii and what you're up to.
So Sketsy is my artist name, but then Sketsy is also like the business, which is a merchandise line that I came up with that's just based on my artwork. So it encompasses basically anything and everything. I have, well, here, back here, there we go, that way. I have original paintings, and then sometimes the original paintings turn into prints, and then the prints turn into posters. They're all at different price points because art can be very like artsy fartsy, right? So you got like the museum, you think of museums and you think of the galleries and the shows, and everybody gets really intimidated by like that kind of crowd, and they shouldn't, because you know art is so subjective. It's for anybody and everybody. But to be honest, those price points, I mean, these paintings take a really long time. So I think that's where the classism comes in. You know, you have an original painting for a higher price point, so you think like you're not supposed to be in that environment community area, when it's just not true. And I really wanted to speak to like all of my community. You know, if you're not the type of person that's going to collect fine art and collect like the paintings, the original paintings, acrylic on canvas, then I have a print. You know, I have a print with a different price point that's like $60, and I have a poster because maybe, you know, you don't want to keep everything and you're more of a temporary decorator or something, you know, and you move around a lot. So then I have posters as well. And I started to do products, so like on different things. I have mugs and totes and puzzles, just all kinds of things to see really what'll work. I just started doing that because the digital pieces had went so well last year. And then I decided to do the coloring book, which was huge. And the coloring book just went big surprise with the coloring book. It was just one of those passion projects where I'm like, you know, I wanted people to be able to have my art, especially during the pandemic. We were all on a budget, you know what I'm saying? So we're not paying $1,200 for no piece of artwork that's gonna hang in the middle of the sala. So what's a way I could get somebody to still purchase my art and hang it on their wall? And so I came up with the idea of the coloring book. And in researching other coloring books, I didn't see any that was like just based on our culture. And I was even Googling like adult coloring books, and there are some hilarious ones out there. Let me tell you, they are super funny and really cool and neat. But still, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't Latino. It wasn't anything about our culture at all. And I said, you know, that's me. That's definitely part of everything that I am. Let me make a coloring book, and made it really thick so that you can play with it in all different types of mediums, and then that way you could tear it out and hang it on your wall. And I think the coloring book really is what started off the line of products for Sketzii and what made Sketzii even like be successful. The only reason the business exists right now is because of this. I'm looking at it. That's what we'll hear.
There we go. There we go. Colores de mi tierra
Yes,
by
color
Sketzii.
tierra. So
Amazing. Available on your website as well. And we'll plug all your stuff as well. So
okay, cool.
definitely when this comes out.
Yeah.
Sketsy.com, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sketsy.com, and it just completely it took off, and it was one of those things where it felt like this is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, because so many people connected with it, and so many people understood. The pages don't necessarily say what they are, where they're from. I didn't want to put any kind of description behind it. I didn't want it to be you know, here I'm going to inform you about our culture. I wanted it to be like, you see it, if you know, you know, like that type of thing. You know, when you see the page, you understand where it's from, and if it speaks to you no matter where you're from, that just goes to show that we have like so much more in common than we initially believe.
Yeah, I like that because I actually approach everything as well the same way. As far as if you know, you know.
No.
So
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
And as
100%.
not to explain too much, I kind of want people to have their own interpretation of some pieces. And I've seen, I mean, all over the place. There are some interpretations of pieces where I go, really? That's what you see? Because I was thinking the complete opposite. So it's really cool how people like impose their own thought process onto what they see in these images. And so with the Sketzii line and with the products, I just hope it again that it's one of those things where they feel connected to wherever it is that they're from, and they can bring it with them in their home, or they can teach their kids. That's been a big one too. Like the coloring books weren't just for adults. I've seen the coloring books been given everywhere. I mean, they've ended up in so many places that that's not where I shipped them to. So they must have been passed on, you know, to someone else. And I think it's a way for them to keep the culture in the household, you know. For us growing up, maybe it was the music. You got salsa, you know, on in the morning, or mommy's playing bachata, you know, on Sunday or after church, you know, we're gonna go eat, you know, whatever it is that we normally eat, our platos. And now we have these things where I have, you know, puzzles, magnetic puzzles. I'm looking at the puzzles too. So let me just go ahead instead of just looking off into the distance. I have
That's not very nice. Very nice.
to help, you know, teach your children at home too, and keep the culture at home, because it's not just a Star Wars puzzle, you know, or it's not just a coloring book about, you know, Legos, all that commercialism. Like this is a for us by us type of thing.
I respect that. I love that. And that's once again that's available on your website. That's tremendous. I love that. I've never seen something like that.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
So you are to be commended for that, definitely. And I know what you do, right? You mentioned what you do is very much right for not only the Puerto Ricans but the Latinos in general. So
Yeah,
I want to throw a term at you, and then we're gonna go to another segment because I have a segment that
I think
I
I
want
know
to
what
go. I'm gonna here we go.
okay.
What is your take on the term Latinx?
Okay, so Latinx to me is just embodying all people. I don't see it as this. I mean, that's so hard to. It's so hard to explain because everybody has a different version of it. I like the term personally. I think it's cool. I think it's okay. I really hate machismo culture, right? So this whole thing of like what's male and what's female, and you know, the male version of things is what is in Spanish or in our language, anyways, is like the primary way you would come to terms with something. So I kind of like the idea of not necessarily fighting against that, but showing that there's just a different way of saying it, you know. To me, that's kind of what it is. That's the perspective that I take on it. I don't necessarily take on it in the way of like sexuality and whether or not how we identify ourselves, although I think it's cool if that's how you want to use it as well. You know, I think it's definitely an all-inclusive term. I definitely think it's a like this generation type of term, because I know a lot of people don't understand it and they're just like, leave things the way that they are. Why would you change the language? It's the language, which I get. Like I kind of understand that argument for it too, but sometimes, you know, being all inclusive is a good thing, you know. So I feel like whatever term you want to use, you use. I tend to use both. I say Latinos, but in written form I might say Latinx, just so that you understand it like it's an all-inclusive thing. But when speaking, I just say automatically Latinos because that's what rolls off the tongue, you know.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So on this segment is called. I'm gonna put in. I'm gonna on this segment. It's called excuse me. What Santos said. From an episode that I done before
All
of
right.
something I said. I will react to it and then I will ask for your take. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and you're
Okay.
gonna hear the audio. You're gonna see the video, and you'll see this episode. This is from episode number 10 called the Latin X Files.
Okay.
So here we go.
Oh snap.
Ready? No, nothing to worry about. Here we
Okay.
go. All right, here we go. Okay, here it is from episode 10, the Latin X Files.
Okay.
Um, I will do that. I will get into the Latinx term. This is a term that has been used over the past couple years, especially prominent in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's one of those ridiculous terms that that America can't seem to uh, have enough of, as far as labeling. You know, as you know, in America, we're constantly labeling groups, we're constantly labeling people, ethnicities, religions, people from different socio economic backgrounds, so on and so forth, and it's ridiculous.
Okay. And that
Okay, so what I all right. So 1 second. So my whole take was just, and again, look, what you said is 100% valid. Like I agree with what you're saying as far as if you're comfortable use it. I understand being inclusive, right? I understand that our society, our culture, yes, has a history of being very machista.
Yeah.
Like that's indisputable. My argument was the source of the word. I feel oftentimes, if you look at who made up the word, this was a word that was created by Anglos. And
Okay.
so my from my vantage point, I feel like this is, and again, full disclosure, this is not, there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong answer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I feel from my vantage point that this word is very Anglo and it was created by non-Latinos to further put us in other boxes and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to kind
Project
of
their, yeah.
right, because the let's be honest, like if you ask the average person who's Latino, non-English speaking Latino, they'll have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. No. But yeah. Exactly.
So
I
that was my thing. I was
very
reacting to that.
specific. Yeah. It's so specific to us here, which is why I'm always so focused on like this diaspora concept, because we are two completely different types of versions of the same culture. Yeah, no, I think what you're saying, makes sense. If that's where I honestly didn't do the research on where it actually came from, like where the term came from. So I could see how you're saying like it's a projected version of what, they want to further put us in X, Y, and Z boxes. But I do like how we've adopted it, how some of us have adopted the term. I
Mhm.
get the sense of, you don't want to put labels on everything. But I also see, just to like counteract that argument, I also see the whole label thing is like, people saying, and I've been talking about this conversation lately a lot, and I'm not exactly sure why, but it keeps coming up about like colorism, and people saying, well, I don't see color. You know, I want you to see color, because for me it's not color in the literal sense. Depending on who you ask, this is like a super light color, and then so, in a different in the summer it's another kind of color. So they might consider me something else. I think of it more as like your nationality. When people see a certain color, they attribute it to a certain nationality plus the attributes that you have on your face. And you can't say that you don't see that. You can't say that you can't tell that I'm different.
That's not true. Right, right. That's
Yeah.
not that, you don't
So
see color. That's not true. Yep.
yeah, and I want people to recognize like who I am, and I want you to be able to say like, oh, not necessarily, there's a different way of saying it, but like the whole what are you question. Like go ahead and ask me so that I can tell you like, yes, I'm Puerto Rican, and some people don't even know where Puerto Rico is. Like I've had those conversations. And it's not that I feel like I have to educate everybody. I just personally like talking about my culture. I don't feel a responsibility to educate everyone in that way, but I personally like to do it in just hopes that like they could spread the word. So in the labels situation, I kind of see it the same way. Like maybe we do need some type of labels sometimes, so that that I am completely different from you, or I do feel a completely different way.
100%. And I agree with that. And I think anybody who says they don't see color, like I get the premise of what you're saying, but
Yeah.
that's a lie.
Right.
That's a lie. Everybody sees color.
Yeah.
It's not about seeing color. It's about how you interpret the color you see.
Yes.
That's what it's about,
Yes.
right?
The
Because
stereotype with it, or the whatever that you have that comes with it. And I've come to realize like, so I've been blessed to like travel a lot, and I grew up as a military brat. And I think people who haven't like traveled a lot, and or because where you're from, there's probably a whole melting pot of people too. But I've been able to live in different cities where it's melting pots, and I've been able to live in different communities where it's all different types of people. Once you get to learn different types of cultures, you appreciate all of that.
yeah,
Like stereotypes kind of, some dissipate and some are like funny, and you're like, oh yeah, you're for sure blah blah blah. Like you're definitely Boricua because of something. And you can make light of it, but I think that you understand life in a whole different way. And so when people start talking about like these inclusive terms and these labels and whatnot, I'm kind of here for it, because I think it's cool that you finally have like a name to something that someone has always felt like different in a way. You're like, oh, and not to say that you have to feel that way either. It's just I think it's kind of cool that those type of conversations are being had now, is all.
Not 100%, and I can appreciate that for sure. I can second that notion. Um, Talk to us about mommies and mimosas.
Oh, mommies and mimosas. Yeah, we just went live yesterday. It is okay. So I'm the co-founder with one of my good friends. Her name is Juleisha. Her and I kind of started this entrepreneurship journey side by side almost. She kind of went before me because same thing happened to her. She was furloughed from a 9 to 5. She had this career that she had been working for, that she had went to school for, everything. We had like the same type of story. And unfortunately for her, she was never brought back. So she had to figure out a way, again, hustle mentality comes through. And she's half Boricua, half Dominican. So she's like, I got to do something. Like, she knows, I got to do something. We got to get in these streets and make something happen. So she started her business, and her and I just got to talking every day. Like, well, what do you do? And what do you do? And even though they were two completely different products and things we were doing, we both found a lot of, one, camaraderie in it, and two, like, advice. She would give me advice, I'd give her advice. She comes from an HR background, so she knows all of these like different rules and regulations and laws. Like, she's all into that. And me, I come from a marketing and advertising background, so I know about how pushing things out there. And every time we would talk, we say, like, there's got to be other people who are thinking the same thing that we're thinking. We want to talk to these other people, like either people who are more experienced than us, or people who are less experienced, or people who are on the same path as us. So we started Mommies and Mimosas as like a networking brunch for entrepreneurs. A bunch of Latinas ended up showing up. So so that's how like mommies came through, Mommies and Mimosas, because we want to call ourselves mommies. And because it's a brunch, we would always be drinking. It's not like a formal thing. We really wanted people to be able to relax and talk, and networking is really hard to do, and it's one of those awkward things, and it's kind of scary. So we want everybody to be in this environment where it's not so formal, and we're not just throwing PowerPoint presentations out there. We're having fun at events. And so now we're up to our fourth event. We started last year. I can't believe we're at our fourth event already.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's been small groups. It's been small groups of women who've gotten together. Some are wannabe entrepreneurs, some are entrepreneurs, some are full blown successful people in their businesses that are here in the city. And it's just been really cool for everyone to talk to each other. I mean, we've legit seen like friendships form, businesses grow, and everyone starts talking to each other, and then becomes like clientele. Like, next thing you know, someone's commissioning me for something or buying one of my products. Someone else has their own spa. The girls end up showing up for the spa. It's just all of these things start happening. And watching people who maybe didn't have confidence at first to even like talk in the first brunch, by the fourth brunch, are just like one of the most talkative people that are there. And me and Juleisha kind of set it up to where we ask questions, and we always have a theme for our brunches. So this time around, we're gonna do like a self-worth theme, knowing your self-worth, and then knowing the price point behind that self-worth. So like, physically, metaphorically speaking, all of
Right.
that. And yeah, it's just, we just do it for fun. We don't make any money off of it. We don't make any profit off of it. What we charge for tickets goes straight into the event itself, to make sure we can buy all the food, and we can have it in a nice place, and be able to have like prizes. All types of people donate things to us. Our prizes have all been like donations from sponsors. It's been really cool. And again, that came about just because we had time at that point. Like, we had time to think of all these different ideas, and now we're trying to have it grow here locally and online. So we also have an online version of it where people can join in, and the very next day after we have the in-person brunch, and just talk.
That's great. I mean, that's just how you guys were able to think of this stuff is fascinating to see that, and it there goes the power of being able to really put your heads together, and having the time, right? It ties back
Yeah.
to what we said in the beginning, right? Having that time to reflect,
Time. Mm-hmm.
and you're able to come up with some of your best ideas. So it's tremendous.
Yeah. Shout out
Um,
because she came up with it. She's like, maybe we should have this thing where like we have a meeting, and everybody comes together, and that's just how it kind of blossomed. So she's very the bullet point type of person, make sure we're in check and we have everything together. And then I'm the hot mess one that kind of interjects myself with like the fun stuff and trying to figure out, what are we going to have in the themes and what's not. And it's a really cool experience to do it and to just like give back, trying to build community. I'm really big on that. Give back to the community. Again, that's that whole like for us, by us type of mentality. We're only going to have each other's backs. And sometimes we feel like we don't fit in to certain spaces, that also offer probably the same type of services or the same type of events. And we just kind of feel intimidated because, the culture is just a little bit different. So to be able to have a space where you can like really relax and have people who are like us, and have the same like worries and fears and expectations and, opportunities, that type of thing.
That's great. I mean, that's tremendous. I really, when I saw that and then hearing you talk about it and explain it, it just really, it's a great thing. It's a really, really wonderful concept, and
Thank you.
it's a great thing that you're doing, and keep it up. Um, so talk to me about what is what is Bate Girls.
Oh man, Bate Girls is really awesome. So it is this nonprofit organization, and if I take it all the way back, the woman who is in charge of the organization, who started the whole thing, we were actually college friends. We'd met in college, and I had seen her do her like senior thesis on trying to go to the Dominican Republic and really elevate the Bates and try to find a way to make housing for them. A lot of the housing that was there is mud on the floor and wood walls, and really trying to make like some concrete houses or try to make more stability inside the neighborhoods. And then it turned into this whole thing because she ended up seeing that the area that she was in had a really bad human trafficking problem. And so here she thought that she was making homes for families where people would feel safe, and it turned out that she was actually making homes so that traffickers could do what they needed to do. And it really hurt her heart. She felt like, the purpose that she went there was for one thing. And then she ended up seeing that there was a whole different culture behind it. And she changed her entire game plan and decided to help the women and children that were victims of human trafficking in this particular area. And she made the first safe house in that area, where she was able to take in some of the women. And it's hard for her because, again, there are just some things that are so far embedded as far as like trauma in our culture, that it's really heartbreaking, and it's hard to try and fight against. So she's definitely out there fighting the good fight, and really trying to find good people for her team and her organization. And the women, because it's a nonprofit organization, whatever they sell, whatever monies that they raise, goes right back to them and their children. So them and the children are in this home, and they make jewelry, and they've been taught how to make jewelry from Larimar stones in the Dominican Republic. And so now the women have, a purpose, and they have a job, and they have a way to make money, and they can live in this home and learn different things that they probably didn't get to learn when they were growing up, because they were put in this, really traumatic experience atmosphere. And where I came in is she asked me if I could do some art on the jewelry, some hand painted, handmade art. And so we kind of put our brains together. And one of the first things that I did with her was paint on leather. And then we made earrings out of the leather. And then the women would put the Larimar stones on, and they put them online for sale. And that's how we decided to raise money for the women and children there. And so ever since she's had this organization, I've always tried to shout them out. I feel like everyone should have that one thing that they donate to. We want to do a greater good for everything in the world. You know what I mean? But if you can pick one to be consistent with and to try and make a difference for, I think that's a really good thing. Everybody's always on Amazon buying everything, including me, even though I'm trying to not do that as much. But Amazon does have like a smile program where, a couple of cents from every single purchase that you make goes towards an organization that you support. Even Instagram, I think, has a feature now where you can go and raise funds. Facebook has that one feature that for your birthday, please donate to this. I think that's really important to do something like that, like back yourself to at least one organization, multiple if you can. But that's the one that I choose to support, just because I know her personally. I know what the journey has been. I know how it started and what it's come to be, and I've seen these women grow up. I feel like one of the women that was there, she started, or she was in the home, I think at 14 years old. And now, she's an adult and her child's with her, and she's prospering. And, these girls are getting an education that they otherwise wouldn't have. So it's just really neat to see from afar how all of it has come to fruition and really like helping the women there have a different life. And I'm someone that's like deathly afraid of human trafficking. I don't think people realize how much of an issue it is. And that's not just overseas. We're talking right here
Right
too.
here. Mm-hmm.
And so I had
Yeah.
a really scary experience one time where I almost got is how I felt. Yeah, coming in from like a red
Wow.
night at the airport and someone pretending to be my Uber, and my Uber was like right behind. So it's all these things, especially as women, that we really have to pay attention to. So I kind of sympathize with, the women that are there and situations that they were put in and not knowing any better, and then being put in as children. It's so heartbreaking. So any way that I can help, I was able to donate some of my books to them, my coloring books. And sometimes they raise funds for Christmas presents because some of the kids have never had a Christmas before. So yeah, Bate Girls is wonderful. It's super awesome. If I'm not mistaken, I still might have some earrings or a pair of earrings that are left on there. If you search for their specific jewelry, I think you can type in Sketzii and you might be able to find something on my line.
That's that's amazing. That's incredible. That story, just hearing that, it's very encouraging because as you know, the world is so full of obstacles and challenges, and there's so much emphasis on the negative, especially during these times, right?
Yeah.
With the pandemic,
Yeah.
and to hear what these organizations that you're a part of, and their missions, hear your story is very encouraging. And I tip my cap to you for being a part of these things, and certainly we all can learn from that. And I commend you for that, for being a part of this, and I thank you for bringing these, um, talking about these as well. And I wanted to make sure, because I had asked you offline about that, I
Yeah.
wanted to bring them up. So I'm glad that you um,
Yeah,
told us about.
I'm always trying to shout out, Bate girls. And human trafficking is one of those touchy subjects. Some people really don't like to talk about it. And especially if it's something that's happening in their own país, you kind of have that like, you don't want
Hmm.
to talk about the bad things that are happening, but it's those conversations that we have to have, even within our own families, Like we were talking earlier with the whole machismo thing. There are just some subjects now that need to be hashed out. There are some things that really do need to be talked about. And I just, I just have this thing in me where I feel like if I give back, I just want to give back in some kind of way and make like some kind of difference, even if it's just small differences. If we could save everybody and everything, that'd be fabulous too. But with the small energy and time that I have and that all of us have, I feel like we can definitely make a difference.
100%. Amen. So before we wrap up, tell everybody what you got going on, what you're up to, what we can expect from Ketsy as well as from Sketzii moving
Okay.
forward.
Life is crazy right now. It's so crazy. Ever since I put like 100% of my energy into all of this, it's just been a whirlwind. I can't even. As soon as I get off here, I'm gonna have an Instagram live as well. It's all of this is like great for the exposure and whatnot. It's just to really wrap my head around how busy my schedule is. I have like 3 calendars. So what's coming up next is I think in December I'm gonna be a part of a show in Ekeko Gallery, which is here locally in St. Pete. I'll have some pieces there that aren't part of my portfolio, but more so for like a juried exhibition. I do have a piece that's hanging right now in Trevine, I believe it's called the Trevine Gallery at the Warehouse Arts District Association, also here locally in St. Pete, Florida. But all of these pieces you'll be able to see on my Instagram. My Instagram is kind of where I let everybody know what's going on. I have 2. So on my blog, I talk about what's going on with Sketzii, and I try to give light to like the struggles and try to be funny about it because it can be a lot of hard work and get really crazy.
Go
Um,
ahead and share those.
yeah, so at K Ruiz PR, that's the blog, my entrepreneurship kind of blog that talks about Sketzii, Sketzii. So the Sketzii is where all the art is, where I'm going to tell you where I'm going to be at, different things that I'm doing. Hopefully, I get to shout this podcast out, and when the time comes. And then on the blog, I'm just talking about all of my woes, and you can see me on a daily basis in my stories, when I have time. I really feel like interacting with the people is where it's at. If it wasn't for like people like you, and the like loyal following that I have, I wouldn't have anything, because everybody tells me what to do basically. I just ask. I'm always asking questions, and everybody gives feedback, and that's how I know, what I'm going to participate in and what I'm not. And right now I'm doing a lot of commissions for Christmas. So, holidays are coming up. I'm busy, busy, busy with commissions, and probably will be for quite some time. And I recently won the Emerging Artist Grant.
Congratulations.
Thank you, in Pinellas County. So that was super cool. Very, very unexpected. First grant, that I really applied for, and I got it. And I was like, y'all about to give me money? Like me? The Puerto Rican girl who like paints stuff about Puerto Rico, that's what you want to give money to? So that was really neat. And next week they were able to fund my trip to Puerto Rico. I'll be able to do my first mural ever. I'm really excited about that.
Wow, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah, I want to have a mural like on my resume so everybody can see it, and hopefully somebody else will want a mural, and to really like make my stamp in PR. Like I want to start having murals. I want my murals to be all over Artillo. So when you ask me about Artillo, hopefully one day someone's like Sketzii, because I'll be all over the place.
Amazing.
And going to a mural festival in Lares, hopefully to network. So they have a really cool mural festival that's going to be going on next weekend, and I want to network and just meet some people and ask them, different things. And maybe go by this hotel. I think I'm going to say it wrong, so I don't want to say it right now, but it's a hotel that's in Utuado, and they have my coloring book there. So I was able to sell my coloring book wholesale to them, and I want to go by and check it out and see, their gift shop and whatnot. And then during this grant period all the way until April, hopefully make some new work. So you definitely have to check out the Instagram to see what's going on, because I haven't scheduled that far ahead. I'm sure it's going to be busy, but I'm just like, I'm focused in the now.
Great. I mean, tremendous. It was a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Listen, very, very proud of what you're doing and what you've done. Pa'lante, keep doing your thing.
For real, you too, my man. You too. I'm excited to see, keep watching the podcast and see what you have going on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Was Ketsy. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you're doing. De corazón, hermana. Thank you so much.
Same.
All the best. Keep in touch. And thank you very much.
For sure. For sure.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. So I want to thank my guest, Ketsy. Tremendous. I mean, she's talented. She's doing a lot of things. Got a lot of things going on right now. Really, Orgullo Boricua. Very good at what she does. And, I'm very excited to see where she heads to next. Certainly, there's a lot of great things she's up to. Guys, make sure you follow her on Instagram, and also visit her shop too. It's important that we support the arts, and we support artists who have these dreams and are putting them into fruition, that are following their dreams and really doing positive things. You guys heard what she's up to, not only as an entrepreneur, but also what she's up to on the other level of giving back, the organization she gives back to. All these things are really important, and it's great to support people like this, who have this vision and have the mission. So definitely looking forward to seeing what she has in store. So that was episode number 24. Again, thank you to my guest, Ketsy. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Santos Thread Shop. Subscribe to the YouTube. Like, comment, the whole thing. Interact what you guys thought about this episode, so on and so forth. Obviously, listen to the audio version. Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Apple, the whole thing. You guys already know. And as always, don't just say what you mean or mean what you say. Say it with your chest.